Welcome back to the channel. I'm going to go ahead and get right into the 5 reasons why you should get the Lumix Panasonic S5, as well as a few cons that you should be aware of. So the first reason is the battery life. Typically, I'm shooting weddings, I'm shooting event videography, I'm shooting corporate stuff, all type of events. And for example, I shot recently pretty much like a documentary type film that was 2 days, and there was 8 to 9 hours both days. I ended up with 10 hours of footage, and I was able to use, I think, 2, maybe 3 batteries. So I have 2 Lumix original batteries and 2 Wasabi batteries. The Wasabi batteries have been really good, not as good as the Lumix. But I would recommend it, especially since you're gonna spend $80 on a Lumix original battery. I think these were 2 for $35. If you're coming from DSLRs like I've came from back in the day, you had those LPE6 batteries. These are about the same size. And for them to last as long as they do, I'm talking 2, maybe 3 hours of continuous shooting is crazy. So the battery life is probably the #1 thing I like about this, because if you're not having to change batteries constantly on wedding days, for example, it's super helpful. So battery life is very, very good. So the other big pro for me with this camera is the color science. I have a C200, 2 Blackmagic 6Ks, and a 4K, and I'm shooting RAW quite a bit. Now this camera can shoot RAW with a recorder, but I don't do that just because of the micro HDMI connection that it has. Not really reliable, and I don't trust it. But I do shoot in the 10-bit 422, which is great. It also has 60 frames a second, but it does crop into APS-C. So that's something to keep in mind, that you are gonna lose that full frame. And when you do shoot in APS-C, definitely noise is magnified, obviously, because you're cutting down on that sensor size and the amount of light that you have coming in. So that's something to keep in mind. But again, the color science is right up there. I matched this very well on the 2-person interview with the C200 in RAW, and I actually didn't even shoot in shooting vlog. I actually shot in Cinelike D, I believe. So keep that in mind. The color science is right up there with Canon, Blackmagic, very good. So the next plus with this camera is the low light. I've shot up to 12,800 ISO, and it's been great. You have the dual ISO, you have 640 and 4,000. So especially when I'm shooting weddings during the reception part of the night, I need something full frame. I need something that can give me a pretty clean ISO performance. And this camera is definitely good at it. I don't think it's the best, but it's very, very good. And if you need low light, capability, this will definitely do it. So my next pro in this camera, and it's probably the biggest pro for me, is the I.B.I.S. I heard about Panasonic's I.B.I.S and how good it was and all of that, but I finally getting my hands on it. The I.B.I.S on this is crazy ridiculous. It has a regular mode as well as like a boost mode, which essentially allows you to shoot handheld the whole day if you need to. And when you're shooting run and gun weddings or you're shooting events, it's super helpful to have that, that capability where you can pretty much lock it down like you're on a monopod. Like it's right up there with it. Especially that I've added some weight with this particular rig. I have the Blackmagic 12G 5-inch screen as well as a deity mic on here. It has a pretty good weight to it. So, it looks like I'm on a tripod or a monopod handheld. So, I can't express how important that is when you're running and gunning, especially for weddings when things happen quick and you need to get the shots and not worry about equipment. This is it. This is it. This is the I.B.I.S you've been waiting for. Now, do keep in mind, there is a little bit of a wobble when you're on a super wide lens. But whenever I put it on a gimbal, for example, I turn off the I.B.I.S. And so just keep that in mind. So the other huge thing, this might be my #1 thing, kind of with the I.B.I.S, it's right there, but dual SD card recording is a must for me. It's huge. You can use this camera as your A camera because it has dual recording. To me, in order to be an A camera, you need to have dual recording. If I was starting out and I was going to start filming weddings, for example, I would definitely look strongly at this camera because it's the only one that really has dual recording. I don't think The Canon R5 or R6 has dual recording. I don't think the Sonys have dual recording. As a matter of fact, I know they don't. So that's huge because more than likely at some point, you're probably going to run into a card issue. It's just it's probably inevitable and can happen. But if you have two cards, the chances of you losing both is very slim. So I think the value of dual card recording is huge. And for the money that you pay for this camera to get dual recording 422 10-bit I.B.I.S for $1,700, and they had a deal where you can get it for $2,000 with I think it was an 85 millimeter 1.8. I mean, are you serious? You can't really beat that. So to me, that dual SD card recording is huge, and it takes the UHS 2 cards, which aren't as expensive. And I do recommend the Pro Grade cards, which I've been using with no problem. Now, there is one thing to keep in mind. There have been people that get .mdt files, and I have gotten those, but there hasn't been one I haven't been able to recover with the provided Panasonic software. That's one of the things I don't like is getting those MTD files, but I haven't had any permanent issues with these and haven't lost anything, so I can still recommend it. So let's get into the cons. So obviously, the autofocus with Panasonics is not going to be very good, but I do have the Sigma 28-70 on here, and on wide, it's not terrible. It's like the old A7S1. It's probably as good as that as far as autofocus. So it's not great, but it can be used for B-roll and non-crucial things. I would never just keep it on there on autofocus. You can use it time and again, but generally you should be manual focusing anyway. That's typically going to be a bit better. So, I mean, that's a con, but I mean, if you're comfortable with, manual focusing, it shouldn't be a huge problem, but that's something to keep in mind. Don't expect any good autofocus performance. So my other con kind of has to do with manual focusing because the autofocus on it isn't great. The EVF on here isn't very good. It's hard to really pull manual focus. I can do it with the peaking on, so it can be done, but it's not the best. And the screen on it is pretty small. The resolution isn't very good, so it's a little bit harder to pull manual focus. But like I said, I'm using an external monitor on it, so it's not a huge issue for me. And I can pull focus without it. It just takes some practice and getting used to how the peaking works to get it right. So it can be done reliably, but I would say that's the biggest con is the screen, and the EVF on here is pretty low resolution. But for $1,700, you can't get a better camera other than probably the Blackmagic 4K, but you're talking about a Micro Four Thirds and no I.B.I.S, no push to autofocus capability with the Blackmagic. So, this is the best value for the money. If I was starting a wedding videography business, I would go with, 3 of these easily, because for $1,700, what you're getting, the I.B.I.S, being able to run and gun, you can't beat it. So overall, I'll probably give this camera a 9 out of 10. It's definitely the best value for the money. So you can't beat that. And what you get with the I.B.I.S, the dual card recording, the small portability, small form factor that it has is a plus. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or any questions, definitely put them in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And I will see you on the next video.